TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi resigns his post. The United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, or UNDOF, urges Israel to withdraw from the demilitarized zone along the 1974 armistice line with Syria. Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman al-Thani urges the international community to give the Jihadist al-Qaeda operatives of HTS who've taken over Damascus a chance to prove themselves. IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi announced his resignation, noting that Israel's upper hand in all warring sectors has prompted the timing of his decision.
I am speaking to you tonight from near Mafalsam, a site where many were murdered and others were abducted. Here, I choose to address the current situation and to speak about myself. The day someone assumes the mantle of command of the Israel Defense Forces, they take a responsibility on their shoulders that has no expiration date. On the first day of the war, during the General Staff Situational Assessment, I took full responsibility, loudly and clearly, for the IDF's failure to protect civilians on Simchat Torah 5784. I did the same publicly on the sixth day of the war. The central mission of the IDF is to defend the citizens of this country. We failed in that. The consequences of that horrific day are something I have carried ever since and will continue to carry for the rest of my life.
General Halevi stressed that the IDF must provide honest answers and inquiries related to the failures of the October 7th, 2023 massacre, while further pushing back against false claims related to unfounded conspiracies that amount to heinous treason.
I can confidently say already, no one hid information. No one knew what was about to happen. No one aided the enemy in executing its cruelty. Such claims are untrue and unjustly harm dedicated service members who have worked tirelessly for the nation's security and fully understand their responsibility given the outcomes. Once the IDF inquiries are completed, we will have a clearer understanding of what happened, why it occurred, and how to address it. The military's inquiry is focused solely on the IDF and does not encompass the broader factors that could prevent similar events in the future. A commission of inquiry or any other external body can investigate and examine and will receive full transparency from the IDF.
At the backdrop of Operation Iron Wall, which includes a vigorous wide-scale counter-terror maneuver by the IDF, ISA, and Border Police Special Operators in the so-called West Bank districts of Judea, Samaria, as well as the Jordan Valley, General Halevi pointed to unyielding operational activities that have thwarted hundreds of terror attacks throughout Judea and Samaria alone and beyond the bounds of the so-called Green Line.
In the fight against terrorism, both civilians and soldiers were killed in Judea and Samaria over the past year. Since the start of the war, we killed 794 terrorists in this arena. In most cases, we thwarted the threat in advance before the terrorists could reach Israeli citizens. This extensive effort has been conducted in close partnership with the Israel Security Agency, a high-quality organization that works alongside us with shared responsibility and mutual learning. Without our proactive defensive and offensive measures, terrorism in Judea and Samaria could have been far worse.
While highlighting the ongoing war versus Iran, in which the Islamic Republic and its axis of proxies have suffered consecutive defeats, the IDF Chief of General Staff also noted the proactive work which the Israeli military conducts vis-à-vis the Syrian front, where the Jihadist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, is trying to consolidate its power with the help of both Turkey and Qatar.
For the first time in this war, we fought directly with Iran. We struck its proxies in the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iranian assets in Syria. Syria has changed. Through swift defensive maneuvers and aerial strikes targeting the Axis, we completely changed the scope of the future threat from Syria.
Turning to New York, where the United Nations held a special Security Council session on the Middle East earlier this week, with deliberations chiefly focused on Lebanon and Syria, during the course of which the Major General Patrick Gauchat, who heads the UNSO mission along the Syria-Israel armistice line, voiced frustration at the presence of the IDF forces within the 1974 demilitarized zone, in complete disregard of Israel's valid security considerations, which do not deviate from common practice under international law.
There should be no military forces or activities in the area of separation other than UNDOF. It is imperative that all parties respect their obligation under the 1974 Disengagement of Force Agreement and uphold the terms of the agreement to preserve stability on the Golan.
It is important to highlight that during the days prior to the fall of the Assad regime in Damascus, armed militants mounted a couple of attacks on UNDOF positions in the 1974 demilitarized zone along the border with Israel, prompting the IDF to intervene, essentially repelling the attacks. Consequently, Jerusalem informed Washington of its operation to take control of Israel's buffer zone with Syria and several other strategic locations on the Syrian side of the border, which may pose a direct threat to the security and stability of Israel in particular and the entire region there at large. And while the United Nations deplored the Israeli move, it failed to remember that in August of 2014, the same Abu Mohammed al-Julani, who then led the al-Qaeda affiliate Jabhat al-Nusra, which eventually evolved into the UN-designated terror group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, captured the 1974 armistice line, waging consecutive battles against the United Nations peacekeepers from the Philippines and Fiji, who were tasked with patrolling the area. And while the Filipino troops retreated eventually from their positions into Israel, a contingent of 45 Fijian troops were taken hostage and held captive for a number of weeks before the al-Qaeda terror operatives under al-Julani's directives agreed to release the UN peacekeepers in exchange for a list of far-reaching concessions. Today, however, the same terror operatives who've seized control of Damascus are demanding that the IDF withdraw from the territories it temporarily captured, stressing that the entire Golan Heights are Syrian territory that have been occupied by Israel.
Syria calls on the Security Council to immediately compel Israeli occupation authorities to withdraw unconditionally from areas they recently entered in Syria, and to respect the 1974 Disengagement Agreement. My country has repeatedly reaffirmed, most recently yesterday, its firm and inalienable right to fully restore the occupied Syrian Golan in accordance with relevant Security Council resolutions, rejecting any Israeli attempts to impose a new reality of occupation.
Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Dani Danon, for his part, stressed Jerusalem's position in which the IDF will act against any threat along its borders, while also seizing the opportunity to highlight the need for the international community to ensure that the Lebanese Iranian proxy Hezbollah does not rearm.
We will act against any threat to our security. Israel will not allow security threats to take root on its borders, as Hamas and Hezbollah did. The international community must take concrete steps to prevent weapons smuggling and Hezbollah's military rebuilding efforts. Failure to act will only invite further instability.
Turning to the World Economic Forum in Davos, where Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman al-Thani, whose country proactively supports the Jihadist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in its efforts to consolidate power in Damascus, stressed Doha's joy in the fall of the Assad regime, while further urging the international community to give the al-Qaeda-affiliated rulers in Damascus a chance.
And when you look at the development now in Syria and engaging with the new leadership over there and the new administration in Syria, we should be cautiously optimistic because no one is knowing them. And we are engaging with them for the first time. We've been listening and we've been seeing some of, very right steps. Also, we should set the expectations right for them. They came to power in days that no one was expecting. And things will need time to stabilize, and they need to be enabled to help to stabilize things.
It is important to stress that the claim by the Qatari Prime Minister that his recent visit to Damascus was the first time his country engaged with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is simply untrue, with ample evidence to the contrary. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. It is important for us to highlight that TV7 Israel is a non-profit ministry with all of our productions exclusively reliant on monthly donations. Therefore, I would like to thank all of you who proactively support TV7 Israel. And note further, if you're blessed by the content of our programs, I would like to encourage you to donate. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I'd like to encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.